You know what I've always loved about Nintendo? I've said it before, but Nintendo does not try to compete with Sony and Microsoft. They don't force anyone to pay online services. They don't make you pay tons of money for consoles that they claim are up to date with today's technology. They freely admit their consoles are underpowered, but the power doesn't matter. They want nothing more than to offer their fans a legitimately pro-consumer experience. At least, they used to. See, one of the problems with Nintendo is it was stuck in the past, lost in the 80s with its archaic copyright laws and strict IP puppy guarding. But as the years went on, Nintendo finally decided to bring themselves up to date. How did they go about doing this? By implementing all the worst parts about consoles and somehow making them worse. Don't take my word for it, let's take a look together. The Nintendo Switch has been on everyone's mind for a while. It looked like Nintendo finally had a console coming out that everyone was unanimously intrigued by. A tablet with a dock for home gaming. Portability with extremely versatile controllers. This thing looked like it had the potential to be unique, with Nintendo's gimmicks that they insisted they always had to throw in without hindering third-party games by them. But then they started talking about the features of the Switch. Let's go through them. Firstly, Nintendo's controllers will cost $70. If you don't know, Sony and Microsoft's controllers cost around $40 to $50. Well, Barry, there's a lot of unique tech inside those controllers. You shouldn't be upset at the price tag, and maybe that's true. But then again, it is Nintendo who continues to insist on making those gimmicky things. I really would prefer it if they just made controllers and stopped worrying so much, but I'm not actually angry about this one. I only brought it up because it's a factor we need to weigh in. The part that really annoys me is the new online service that Nintendo is offering. As I said before, Nintendo has decided to catch up with its competition, and it looks like online multiplayer is going to be a bigger part of Nintendo. Okay, what's the problem? Well, as most services are these days, this is not free. Why would you expect otherwise? The main issue is that Sony and Microsoft offer video games to entice people to pay for their online services. Of course, they're not free games, you are paying for them through that service, but at least there's something there. What's Nintendo offering to entice people to pay for their service? One NES or SNES game a month. Yeah, one game you've probably played before, one game you do not get to choose, and one game that after that month is over, goes away. Disappears as in, you don't get that NES or SNES game forever. For paying for their online service, you get the privilege to play a game that you could download on your computer or cell phone and play for free. Emulators for NES and SNES games have been out for years, and we have access to hundreds of them. This doesn't make any sense, but I'm not finished yet. Among the services Nintendo will offer for you to enjoy a comfortable gaming experience are allowing you to play games with your friends and having you download an app on your cell phone to talk to them in-game. Imagine that! It's exactly what it sounds like. You're picking up your cell phone, calling your friends, talking to them on your cellular device while you game with them. Nintendo! I thought you were trying to bring things up to date. All you did was move from the 80s to the 90s. This whole thing just feels so archaic, but I mean, it's Nintendo. Really, what did we expect? Well, Barry, when it comes to the paid online systems, you gotta remember that unlike Sony and Microsoft, Nintendo actually make their own games. That money going to them would be a good thing, wouldn't it? And the answer to that is yes, if they were offering a true service, but Nintendo has not done a ton of online games. They've not ran servers like other AAA game developers have. If someone came to you and told you that they would build you a house, knew very little about doing so, but expected a premium for building the thing, what would you say? I need proof first that Nintendo is capable of this before I just give them my money, especially when I'm draining my phone's battery just to game with my friends. That's ridiculous, and I'm scared for Nintendo. They're making so many mistakes already with this. Look, Barry, to be fair, Nintendo is finally starting to try and compete again, and you're harassing them. Companies make mistakes, and so what if Nintendo made one mistake one time? And as much as I'd like to agree with you, Nintendo makes huge mistakes almost every time they make a console. They're pretty much the king of mistakes. Let's go through those real quick. How about every system they make coming out weaker than even Sony and Microsoft's consoles? Which is saying something, because Sony and Microsoft make some really weak consoles. Third-party developers want to make games on Nintendo's consoles, but they can't because the hardware isn't there. And when the power was there, they did other incredibly dumb things that gimped the system. The Nintendo 64. It was the most powerful console of its generation, but it used cartridges. Developers sometimes couldn't compress all the information, so the games just didn't come. Everyone else was using discs, which was cheaper. Another thing that dissuaded developers was how expensive it was to get the game on a Nintendo system. The GameCube, great console, right? Small discs. Only around a gigabyte of information could be stored on those discs, so again, compressing or the game just didn't go there. At the time, Xbox and PlayStation were hosting online multiplayer. Nintendo sold an add-on for the GameCube to enable this ability, and released one game that even used it, Phantasy Star Online. Ever heard of it? Neither have I. Nintendo continued to slap third-party developers in the face with the Wii. Their controller gimmicks made development difficult and porting games over even more of a challenge. And then we have the Wii U's marketing. When you ask people what a Wii U is, they tell you it's a console that everyone thought was an add-on for the Wii. Was it a great console? Yeah, it was. But again, more gimmicks that scared third parties away. Right, okay, that's true, but who cares about third parties anyway? Well, let me ask you a question. If you could buy a Nintendo console and get all of your Mario and Zelda games, plus every third-party Sony and Microsoft got, why would you buy any other console? People like having one platform that plays every game they want. It's simple. That's why I game on PC. And Nintendo could have this, but they threw it away. Someone asked me if I would get the Switch day one, and that is a huge no. Not necessarily because of Nintendo, but because consoles are only as good as the games they play. What's the point of buying a new console when there aren't any games to play, especially with how limited Nintendo's launch is? Someone then showed me this. Hey look, Binding of Isaac's on the Switch. Would this entice you? Now why did you have to go and do that? This only reminds me of even more problems Nintendo has. I love The Binding of Isaac, but the game can be suggestive, inappropriate. The developer actually had to change names of items and even change some items entirely to make it a safer game. Otherwise, Nintendo would not allow it to be put on the system. Good to know Nintendo's into censorship. Barry, Nintendo is not into censorship. They just wanted to make the game safe for kids. Yeah? Well, that's not Nintendo's job. Games are an artwork. Parents need to decide if the game is appropriate. But let's address this censorship thing a bit more. Have you ever played a Nintendo game on YouTube? Guess what happens? That video gets copyright claimed unless you're partnered with Nintendo's network. That's not censorship at all. What about all those cease and desists on fan-made games that Nintendo has nothing to do with? Even though it's legal to make your own game and even remaster any old media, so long as you don't try to make a profit off it, Nintendo will threaten these developers. These people who selflessly work for years remastering these games that they once loved for nostalgia, to share them with people who also love these games. These people are threatened with legal action, lawsuits, by the very company they love so much. The more I see Nintendo implement these business practices, the more I think about Sega. A company once in the same position, struggling to maintain their consoles. They tried too hard to make their games unique, and in turn, never stuck with the same system. If one Sonic game was good, it didn't matter, because the next one would be nothing like it at all, and gamers do like consistency. I'm not saying you should be repetitive, Nintendo, but for the love of God, innovate your games, not your hardware so much. Yes, gaming gimmicks are fun, but they deter third parties and they only bring that niche set of gamers who would enjoy that. Sawing off a leg before a marathon is hardcore as hell, but nobody expects you to win after that. So Barry, where do you see Nintendo going? What is their future? Well, despite the amount of die-hard fans, the amount of money they're worth, they're deterring too many people. I want to keep supporting Nintendo, but giving a company my money simply because I like them when all they're offering is anti-consumerism is illogical. Like I said before, I'm reminded so much of Sega, and if I had to guess, if Nintendo keeps shunning the third parties and keeps spitting in the face of their loyal fans, they may go down the same road, turning into yet another simple DRM full of Nintendo games, or worse, go so bankrupt that another company grabs them up. Sony is already money hungry as it is. I would be terrified to see what they would do with Nintendo as their hostages. What if Nintendo took a break from video games and consoles for a while? Branched out like Sony and Microsoft did. That could do them well. What about party planning? They like party-style games, right? That could be cool. No, darn it. I forgot, that won't work. Nintendo may be a good party planner, but they'd never invite anyone to their third parties. Nintendo, please, just think about the consumer. Yes, you may have Legend of Zelda, but as the consumer, I rule. Okay, enough Nintendo puns. Just think about changing your strategies for the better. Come on, Nintendo. Make this switch.